George Forcier, I'm chairman of the planning board. These are the other planning board members. This is Phyllis Crane, Cheryl Case, Jeff Lacey, and Lara Mata-Mabius. The town zoning bylaws charge us with approving or not approving a special permit for things like solar farms. Okay. So over the next several weeks, we'll be gathering a lot of information about the proposal and ultimately make a decision about whether to approve it, and if we do, how to regulate it, how to mitigate the effects of the solar farm in the town. Tonight is the beginning of the public hearing process that's required by law, where we listen to you all about your concerns or questions, and then over coming weeks, we'll continue this public hearing with other sessions where, while it may not be such a big crowd of people asking questions, we will be chewing on all that information, and we'll be sending questions to the developer and our consulting engineers, and just kind of amassing lots of information, a lot of answers to a lot of questions. So at the end of that process, having heard from everybody, presumably, we will figure out what we want to do with respect to that special permit and the site plan, and write a very detailed, sort of complicated legal determination. And if the
Chair, are going to be a problem.
I'm sorry, was I interrupted by somebody?
Lori, mute yourself.
Laura, you interrupted me.
Laura tried to mute. Oh, I muted Laura.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Well, wherever I was. It's a process. We have to put this decision together in a very legally way, and that's the outcome of the process. So this is the very beginning of it. Right? Okay. So, good thought. Thank you. We all have our cell phones with us. We probably want to silence them like in a movie theater, right? Okay, so I want to, first of all, I prepared my remarks. I appreciate you all coming out. It's nice to have this many people helping us do the job that you all have entrusted us to do. The public hearing tonight is about a proposed approximately 20-acre solar array on a Boyden Farm property roughly at the corner of 116 and Warrenbrook Road. It's a dual-use system that the State Department of Energy promotes. And in this case, what it means is that there would be solar, 20 acres of solar panels, 10 feet high, spaced far enough apart that sunshine supposedly gets in there, lets the grass grow, and then you can hay it, or you can graze it, or you can grow something else, I guess. But that's the dual-use concept. So it's not just covering the field entirely and shading everything underneath. The state sort of promotes this through its green energy and programs. They incentivize it, in fact, for developers. The full detailed application is online on the planning board website if you want to dig into it. And any other documentation we get as a part of this process we'll put online as well on the town website. So if you want to follow along and read all the detailed information that we developed by talking to Melinda and her friends and our consulting engineers, it should all be there.
I couldn't find a map online.
Which map?
Of the solar array.
There's bunches of maps, but I'll double check and make sure that they're accessible.
Okay, all right. Is there a copy?
I can add to
There's a
that.
little map that we asked the applicant to put together for us for tonight, and there's more on the table over there. It's just kind of a nice, quick, simple overhead view of what's being proposed. which is
I
probably
can add-
simpler than trying to go to
I can add to
website
the
and
question,
gigantic.
George,
Yeah,
which is, I called the town hall this morning, the town office building this morning, because I couldn't find it. Will Cody on Maple Street. And
Fine.
as we had, thank you for putting the blurb in Conway Currents, that seems to be our newspaper these days. We were promised to have a synopsis and the application and all of the documentation online on the town website.
Yeah.
It all may be there, but it's not in the same location. So part of my recommendation for tonight is that under the link for this particular project, there are sublinks for every single piece of documentation that applies to it, so that when I called this morning, I talked to the very kind gentleman who's the assistant to the administrator,
Yep.
and he guided me to this application, which was under the planning board, which is in a separate location than the synopsis. I didn't see any engineering documents which apparently have been offered to the fire chief. I would like those also in the same location.
They should be there.
They are not.
I see some people saying they found them there.
Under the planning board or under the
Under
main?
the- Well, I'll talk to Adam later to see if we can make
Okay.
it more
Oh,
user-friendly.
So my request in brief then
Mhm.
is that all documentation that's available to anyone in the town is available on that website under one heading. So when folks go to the Town of Conway website, they can click on this particular project and they have a list of items.
Sure. I can talk to Adam about how to do that. He's
I appreciate
he's
it.
our webpage guy.
Thank you.
Okay. Not that I want to open the floor to questions, but I have some more procedural things I want to touch on before we get rolling. So this is an urgent question. Okay, so this is likely to be a multi-session public hearing. I will keep you posted, obviously, about future sessions, when and where they're going to be. Melinda Costello is the lady over in the round table. She's the engineer from Weston and Sampson, who's the engineering company that's working for Blue Wave Solar on this. So she's going to provide us with an overview initially before we take questions from the public.
I just wanted to let the people on the computer know, on the Zoom call, know that when George takes questions, raise your hand electronically for me, and it's down at the bottom, down there where you see my thing. And then I'll unmute you.
Okay. There's a half dozen or more people out there in cyberspace. Now, about tonight, I guess I want to follow some basic protocols to make this easy for everybody, so we can kind of slide through this before we all asphyxiate. All the comments, questions should be directed to the chair, that would be me, okay, not each other. That's number one. And I'll, recognize you, and then you can. It would be helpful if you stated your name and address. I know I asked you to sign a document there so we can keep track of it for the record, but it's helpful to people, I think, if you stand up and say who you are. As in our regular meetings, I'm going to hold everyone to 3 minutes. Okay, so if you have a long speech prepared, see if you can condense it to 3 minutes. After everyone's had a chance and everyone's still game for more, we can kind of do a second round and you can have another 3 minutes. But let's stick to 3 minutes so everyone has an opportunity tonight to say the thrust of what they want to say. My job is to ensure that everyone gets a fair shake, and so I'm going to be watching the clock, and please don't push the envelope and make me be the bad guy. No active debating with each other. This is like one-way communication. And as I said at the beginning, please hold your peace while others are speaking so that we can all hear them. And any speaker who reads from a document or displays a document, would you please leave a copy of that with the board so we can enter it into the record? Okay. I don't know if any of you have such things, but if you were to bring in some document you want to wave around, that's great. But we'd love a copy of it. All right, that's what I have. Any questions about the protocol? Pretty straightforward, right?
have a question. Do we ask you the questions that we want to ask Melinda?
Yes, please. She can hear you. And
Okay.
What I've asked Melinda to do is give us an overview at the beginning, for those of you who haven't read anything except what maybe what was in the currents. And then we will hear from you all. She's going to keep track for her purposes. And then when we're done, I've asked her to try to reply to those questions that she has answers for at the moment. A lot of the stuff she may not have direct answers for, but she will come back later with those answers. Okay, that's my plan. I've got people here keeping track of your questions and your information so that we can compare notes with Melinda later and make sure all of your concerns are addressed at some point. We may not have all the information tonight, but we will get there. Yeah, Bob?
I'm recording the session for FCAT, FCAT, Frontier Community Access Television Station. That's our Conway television station. It'll be up on our Video On Demand channel, the YouTube channel. You'll be able to find it at FCAT, FCAT Media. So if you go to YouTube, FCAT Media, you'll get to see all of the stuff, including a lot of things I'm sure you want to watch, like our select board meetings. They're all on there.
All right.
So please don't talk too much because this little microphone has to pick everybody up.
I see one last procedural question, I presume.
Yeah, so I think if I'm understanding correctly, we're getting mostly an overview of the engineering of the plan tonight, and then questions around that.
Yes.
I don't see Ron in the room. Is Ron gonna be involved in the
Ron
conversation?
Sweet?
Ron Boyd?
Ron Boyden. I don't know anything about Ron Boyden. It's his, I'm not his boss.
Yeah.
He's the owner of the pay, he's the owner of the property, and he has an arrangement with Blue Wave Solar
Yeah.
for this project. I've not talked to him. I don't know that he has to talk to us.
Yeah.
That's totally up to him. And I don't know if he's here or not. So I presume if he is, you would jump up and say so.
Thanks.
Okay? Yeah? All right. So Melinda Costello, could you give us the overview, please?
George, would it help people see the visual if the lights were on over her, or is that going to mess up the Zoom?
There's a switch right behind you, Melinda.
It's essentially invisible.
Yeah.
Better.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for taking time out of your night to join us here. As George mentioned, I'm going to give a high-level overview of the project. I know you all have concerns and questions and comments that you want to make about the project, so we will get to those. Just for introduction purposes, again, my name is Melinda Costello. I'm a civil engineer. I work with Weston and Sampson. We're the engineering company that was hired on behalf of Blue Wave to prepare the civil design piece of the project. The applicant is Blue Wave. Their LLC name for this project is Roaring Brook Solar LLC. They are not here tonight. They will be at the next meeting. And I also just want to quickly mention, so the overall project is a 4.99, essentially 5 megawatt DC dual use single axis tracker system, and it does have a battery storage component with it. If questions are associated with the battery storage, I will note them down. There is a fire protection engineer associated with the project. He had a conflict tonight and could not make it, but he will be in attendance at the next meeting and will be able to answer any technical questions. I cannot answer technical questions about the battery, but I'm happy to write those questions down and make sure that we're prepared to answer any questions associated with that in the future. So George kind of gave my overview for me, so thank you very much. But the project is a dual use tracker system. Blue Wave has a lease agreement with the Boyden Farm. The project is located right off of 116 South Deerfield Road and Roaring Brook Road. So the plans itself do not show the right-of-way of 116, but Roaring Brook Road is to the west. So on the handout that everyone got, it kind of gives a better understanding of where the project is relative to 116. 116 is at the top of your page, and we are proposing to come in just behind his existing cornfields, right in front of the dairy farm. And we'll have a 20-foot wide proposed gravel access drive coming up into the system. The system will be surrounded by a 7-foot tall fixed farm knot fence. And then within the system, we'll have a a tracker system. It's going to be elevated 10 feet above the ground, and that just allows for dual use. They'll have a farming operation underneath. This site is going to have cattle. There'll be cattle grazing throughout the array, and they'll do some haying. So the inner row spacing between the array is 18 feet. And this system, it's not like your typical ground mount system where it just faces south and it collects the sun. It's going to be mounted in a north-south orientation, and the system tracks the sun. So in the morning, it's going to be facing east, and then throughout the day, midday, it's going to be facing directly up at the sunlight, and then towards sunset, it's going to be facing west, and it's going to rotate throughout the day. And then it does have a fixed position at nighttime where it's not getting any sunlight. So that's the operation of the system. Along the north side of the fence, we are proposing a vegetative screening for the northern abutters. There's no tree clearing associated with the project, and everything is within the existing farm fields for the Boydens. Let me see, I mentioned we have a 20-foot wide gravel access road that's going to come up off of Roaring Brook Road into the fence. There's an equipment pad associated with the project that will host all of the equipment, the transformers, the inverters, and there will be a battery storage container on the project as well, and that's going to be in that blue rectangle that you see on this smaller handout. We did a stormwater analysis with the project, and there is one stormwater basin that's directly to the west of that blue rectangle that will be installed, and then the outfall for that basin will drain north towards the wetland system outside the limit of work. That's a very high-level overview. I'm happy to go into details and talk about the design more, but we can open up questions, and I can go from there unless you want me to go into...
Well, this is my first rodeo, so I was imagining going into this that we'd get your overview. I have a feeling most of these folks came armed with questions, but rather than have questions and answers and back and forth, I was thinking maybe we could reserve time at the end for you to answer questions all in one shot,
Yeah.
so that you're not constantly jumping up and down, unless I voted on that approach. It just feels my brain anyway. So, having said that, and hearing no strong objections from my members here, let's go ahead and start taking questions from townspeople. The way I would approach that is I would start with any town officials who were here in their capacity as town official, and then residents of Conway, and then I guess if there's some people who aren't residents of Conway and feel a need to speak, we could hear from them last. Okay, does that make sense? All right, now I see at least one town official here, well, I see two actually. There's a selectman and a fire chief. Maybe missing some others. Another selectman, two selectmen and a fire chief, and...
Select woman.
All right, so, would any of the elected officials or appointed officials of the town of Conway care to comment or ask questions at this time?
Yeah, Chris Harmon, fire chief for the town, new fire chief for the town. I did get the prints, and I've been reviewing them, but I had quite a few questions. Are you talking one best container, multiple best containers? There's quite a bit of questions around those from my aspect.
Multiple what container?
Best, battery energy storage containers. Those are the ones that hold the batteries. Yep. I did get your prints on the road.
Could you speak louder?
Sorry. I did get the prints on the access road, the gate access, the knock boxes, which are the ones that are keyed for our equipment, and that's all good. Most of my questions, as I explained to the planning board at a previous meeting, revolve around the battery energy storage, and mostly because there wasn't really much detail at all in the initial stuff, the initial print submitted to me. So I'm wondering.
I guess I'm going to ask Melinda to address that because it's a question of timing and when we get that information.
Yes.
So could you respond to his concern? I guess you guys haven't talked to each other.
I
Not
can.
since-
We've exchanged some emails, but I have passed those questions along to Blue Wave. They're working with their electrical engineer and their fire protection engineer to pull that detailed information together for you, and we will be prepared to answer that in the coming weeks. I will say at the planning level with what we submitted is just a typical schematic of what generally is included. And then that more detailed design usually happens at the 60 to 90% from an electrical standpoint. So it wasn't in the works yet, but because there's a lot of questions from you and we know the public too, it is being worked on. So as soon as I have information to share, I will.
Thank you. And just to clarify, we expect at the end of this session to schedule a continuation of the hearing to May 19. And that's where I think a lot of the information about the desk unit and some other things are going to become available, at the granular level. Okay. So, any other? Chris?
Yeah, I don't know if it can be answered, but I was wondering if Blue Wave was considering this as a community solar project for the energy that they're going to get from the project, or if it's a power purchase agreement with the utility company of Eversource.
Do you have an answer to that?
I don't specifically know what their arrangement is, if it is associated with that community solar, but it's something that we can bring the answer to at the next meeting.
Okay. Other town officials? Elaine?
Well, we were just wondering if, since the emergency shelter is the grammar school, if this happened to take place, if there could be some agreement about emergency backup energy for the school.
Yeah, and that's probably something that the planning board would take into consideration when we do the order of conditions. Seeing and hearing no other town officials in their capacity, I guess we'll open it up to town residents. I don't know if we want to go left to right, right to left, front to back. Mary's hand sort of up. Okay, Mary?
Howdy. Hi, I'm Mary McClintock. I live right below the grammar school at 929 South Deerfield Road. I'm the one with the driveway that got wiped out in the two storms in July 2023 that took out a large chunk of Route 116 and $15,000 in debt because of that storm damage. So stormwater is the top of my list. And I read a lot of the 177-page application, and including the stormwater. The thing that is not clear to me is that rain falling on a hayfield is spread out, and it flows spread out. Rain falling on a whole bunch of solar panels makes a sort of like a drip line scour. Think about a house that doesn't have gutters and there's a line of erosion underneath it. I'm concerned about concentration of the water and making it go faster. Clearly the storms in July 2023 were beyond 100-year storm levels, so I'm concerned about erosion control, I'm concerned about water flow. And one of the questions is, there's all this information about if it's this much rain, then they're going to make sure that all the stormwater retention is okay. Well, who's going to do that? And who would a resident contact? And what procedures would be in place if something looks like, hey, the stormwater thing is overflowing and it's eroding and it's being a problem? So, would there be a potential of a condition of approval that requires a point of contact number or email to be posted on the fence with the town for the life of the project, so that anybody would know how to reach somebody? That's one question. Fencing. It's 7 feet tall. It is designed on those plans to hit the ground. I think that a 6-inch gap above surface is standard for small wildlife passage. This is a huge area that would be completely blocked off from anything but a mouse or a vole. So small wildlife passage. Wildfire. We have a fabulous fire department, and wildfires, it's been a, almost red flag warning today.
There was a fire in Conway today.
What?
There was a fire in Conway today.
There was a wildfire in Conway today. So what is the, what are I hope that the fire department, along with the battery concerns, is like how you're dealing with wildfires and access to that. And A good question too is, has Blue Wave made a donation to the Conway Volunteer Fire Department? Because, since there could be needs there.
Here, here.
Decommissioning. The plan has provisions for removal of the above-ground structures, but makes no mention of removing the underground conduit and cable. What is the plan for that? How deep is it buried? If this goes back to being plain agriculture later on, and there's a whole bunch of stuff buried that then the equipment of the agriculture use gets messed up. And so is there a plan to remove that as well? And the best questions, really, I defer to Chris, who I'm thrilled that Chris is our new chief and that Chris is on this and working with that. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Right on 3 minutes. Excellent. Okay. Next. Harold. Yeah.
Howard. Yeah, I'm Howard Boyden, same last name, not the owner. Okay, first comment, not a question, comment is, there's no way that this should be planted on agricultural land until every mall parking lot and rooftop is covered with that. Now to the questions. In the 177 odd page application, I notice it's checked that the land is not in chapter 61. I don't believe that's the truth. And if it is,
We researched it, it is.
yes,
Since
okay,
it's on it.
but it says it isn't. Now, this is change of use with the lease. I believe the town can exercise its right of first refusal to actually buy that property. Just,
We
Ooh.
cannot.
We looked into it.
We looked into it.
okay, you can't, so what has to happen here? Is there gotta be about a buyback? What's, like, if they decided to have a relative put in a house lot, and they'd have to pay the 5-year difference in the back taxes.
Right.
What has to happen now? That's my question.
That's a good question, and there is an answer for it that I can provide later, but
Well, we're all interested in that answer.
I can answer.
Thank you.
the answer is,
Okay.
according to assessors, is that, yes, the land isn't, that's an error in the application. And no, they don't have to sort of follow the same procedure that a house would, that the State Department of Revenue, Department of Energy Resources view this situation as sort of allowable. So that the underlying agricultural property, because it's still being used for agriculture, is viewed as, same use, and therefore it's allowed. And the commercial activity of the panels above it is sort of viewed separately. So that's how the Department of Revenue and DOER kind of view this dual-use agrivoltaic systems. And in fact, I've been told that the state actually kind of encourages it, and encourages keeping the property in 61A in order to get the green energy, I gather.
So,
So it's
George,
But
can
it
I?
wouldn't be A, it'd be a different 61, I suspect, but okay. The other question
George,
is,
Melinda wants this.
Melinda, yeah.
Can I just say something
Sure,
on my
sure.
behalf? Listing it, saying no in the application is an error, and we will get that rectified and resubmit this application form with the correct answer. There's no intent to pull this project out of Chapter 61A land. As George kind of mentioned, the project is associated with the state's DOER SMART program for solar, and it has the agricultural adder. So being Chapter 61A, throughout the lifetime of the project, to get that agricultural adder, it has to stay farmland and it has to have a farming use with it. So there's no intention of pulling the parcel out of 61A associated with this proposed application.
okay, and the other thing is just a comment to totally back up Mary's comment about the 2023 deluge. That's gonna happen again, folks. It's not a 100-year storm. They happen every 5 years now, okay? I know that land. I tilled and farmed that land for many years. It is not erosion resistant, and that's why only the 6 acres at the very top of the hill gets plowed on a regular basis and gets cover cropped in the fall. It is very prone to
Thanks.
erosion.
Thank you, Don. Yes?
Carol Dash, Maple Street, Conway.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Carol Dash, PPPSCH, 228 Maple Street, Conway. My question relates to Howard's question about the agricultural use. What is Boyden's plan for agricultural use, dual use of that land under the solar panel system? What is he planning to do? And what is Blue Wave's experience with dual use, agricultural use of land with huge solar arrays like this? What in fact is the reality of the agricultural dual use of this land?
Okay, I'm going to answer the first part of that, because I think I did earlier. The plan is, as we've heard secondhand, is to graze cattle, maybe grow corn in that area. That would be the agricultural use. The State Department of Agriculture and the State Department of Energy have to sign off on the plan to make sure they feel it qualifies. And they also monitor over time whether that agreement they have with the developer is upheld. I can't speak for Blue Wave's experience with agrivoltaics. Maybe Melinda could address that at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. And I can't speak for Ron. You know, he may have a different plan today that's different than what he sold to other people, but that's the indirect information we got. And I'm not sure that what he does agriculturally under the panels is within our jurisdiction anyway.
But if the land is being held as agricultural land and the dual use is specified, then there has to be a plan for agricultural use of
Absolutely.
that
There
land.
will be a plan, and it has to be approved by the state.
And
it has to be
Howard's
followed.
experience is that most of that land is not tillable. Then I'm curious what the agricultural use of that land is going to be.
Well, as I said, what we've heard so far, it sounds like grazing. And there's mechanisms in place to make sure there is an agricultural use of that land during the time of the life of the solar panels. Chris?
The state says on the agricultural part that it has to be, the entirety of the land, which I believe is 100 acres, has to be primarily agriculture, not solar. So that 20 acres can still be solar, primary solar on the 20 acres, but overall it's 100 acres total. So overall it's still primary agriculture. That's the state's interpretation.
Right. So that, you know, there's players at the state level that are monitoring this stuff and set the rules for it. In our case, they have to ensure the planning board that it is a dual use, because if you look at our zoning bylaws, there's different criteria for dual use versus just straight up solar. Okay, next 3-minute statement or question? Yes.
Jerry LeBlanc, 2332 Maypolen Road. I'm here as the voice of experience and a warning. I'm an abutter to the only other solar project in Conway. And it's an absolute nightmare across the board. It's an ecological disaster. That land will never be the same again. Blue Wave may be here representing some project, but they're going to subcontract other people to do the work. There's not going to be any follow-up. There's not going to be any oversight. There's going to be litter, trash,
Could you excuse me?
all
Could you
over the
address me,
place.
please? Thanks.
Sure. There was so much that we had to do as neighbors to that construction project to keep them in bounds. It was ridiculous. The planning board wasn't there to like pick up the trash, to call them out when they were violating the DEP laws. They were running roughshod over the land up there. that was a clear-cut project of like 30 acres. This, at least, is not a clear-cut project, but still, it's going to be a whole lot of equipment and a whole lot of technology installed into something that's now very beautiful and pristine. It is never going to be the same. And you can, and the state may want to like make it okay, and the state did stuff, and they bypassed wetlands laws up at our place, and they were just like, no, this is a solar project. We're going to waive that, 100-yard buffer, 100-foot buffer. We're just going to let this happen. The state isn't protecting us and the rural community and the beauty of this town. This board is, and we are. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
It's an absolute shame, and the ecological disaster to the wildlife, I've witnessed it. I mean, I lived there for 20 years before this thing came in, and now I see the trees are just falling. The wildlife is leaving. It's an absolute, it's a folly. And unfortunately, it's all a profit. It's all for profit. And so I would recommend that this planning board does not approve this permit.
Okay, thank you. Devlin?
Yep. I'm also a neighbor next to the solar installation that went up behind our property. I cannot call these things solar farms. It's a complete scam. These are not farms. My question, I have many questions for Melinda, is if you've ever, I'm wondering if you've ever farmed on a large farm before, or if anybody on Blue Wave has ever farmed before and knows what it takes to build healthy soil. I'm wondering, with our experience when they brought in fill to level out almost the highest elevation in Conway, where they built this on a slope, when we did get all of that catastrophic rain, a lot of erosion happened. Microbes, organic matter, sunshine, and we need a little bit of rain to make a healthy soil. If you're going to be bringing in fill to level out or do any of that, are you going to be reseeding with the pasture mix for these cows? How do the tractors, I can't imagine tractors spreading manure under these panels. I also, as Mary said, with the rainfall, if these panels are going to be flat, and if it's a cloudy day and pouring rain, it's going to be a big flat table where water is going to be pouring on these panels. It doesn't make any sense. As Howard said, solar belongs on already developed land to be considered green energy. We need our pastures, we need our fields, we need farms that we're not going to be ruined. I'm worried about hailstorms coming in and damaging the equipment. Other states have had giant solar fields that have been damaged by hail. All of the glass and all of the chemicals that are in those panels are going to go into the land. This is across the street from our school. Our children go to school there. I'm worried about EMF radiation. I just had a smart meter put on my house. The guy was telling me that these rotating panels are much more dangerous than the standard panels that are behind our house because of the EMF radiation. I'm wondering if you have numbers on the EMF radiation. How far out does this EMF radiation go? And when there is a disaster, because we had dirty electricity coming into our homes for 8 months out of this project's beginning life, because the inverters malfunctioned, because we live on a rocky ledge, which can create a gigantic magnetic field. Inverters are one of the top 10 pieces of solar equipment that break. Okay, if there's going to be any disaster, are there alarms that are going to notify the headquarters? Because we had an alarm going off, Chris can attest to this, where Nexamp wasn't notified. Jerry had to go up to the fence and call the hotline number on the fence to notify that there was an alarm going off on the battery unit. So if these batteries explode or if there's a fire, I'm really concerned about our children's health. I'm concerned about their health and well-being because the dirty electricity really affected my children and me. It does not belong on farmland. That's my last comment.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am, what's your name?
Devlin, Devlin, D-E-V-L-I-N, and Selman, S as in Sam, E-L-M-A-N. And I wrote an article that was published in the Gazette about are disaster. You can look it up. More research needs to be done on solar. Also, these things get hot. On a hot summer day, they can get up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That ambient air temperature is going to increase 10 degrees where the cows are. I'm worried about the cows' well-being. And I'm also, last real quick question, how many other farms have you successfully done dual-purpose agrivoltaic installations on? Are they all still in operation? If not, why did they stop? And where are they located? I think we all need to know about all of that.
Okay, thanks, Devlin.
Yeah.
Next, Tim Luce.
My name is Tim Luce. I live basically right behind the legend on your picture. So my wife and I have lived there for over 30 years. We've raised our children there. Our kids sled on that hill. Howard used to hold sledding parties there. Our kids would go to those. So naturally, we're concerned about this project. We're going to be looking up out of our living room window with this. So I have several questions and concerns. First, on the application, it lists the project of being 26.2 acres, 27.1 acres, 24.5 acres, and 19 acres. So something's not adding up there, so that needs to be looked at. I'm also concerned that in the bylaws it indicates that it can't be more than 15% slope. That needs to be looked at carefully, because I think that's been discussed at meetings and it needs to be addressed. Section 63 of the special permit guidelines talks about significant adverse effects to the neighborhood or the town. Section CB talks about adequacy of utilities and other public services. The application says there shouldn't be any additional pressure on any public services for this project. I go back to what Chief Chris was talking about. I hope that Blue Wave is planning on providing some training to the fire department, and I love the idea of a donation to the fire department. Also in this section of adverse effects, it talks about the quality of the environment, adverse effects to wildlife, vegetation. A lot of that's been talked about already. That's a concern. We look out our window every day. There are deer feeding there, all turkey, you name it. They're up there in that field. Section CD talks about will the value of abutting or otherwise related properties be affected? You can't tell me that looking out my living room window at this, instead of that beautiful field that we look at, is not going to affect our property value. So I have a question, is Blue Wave going to plan on reimbursing us for that loss of property value?
Yeah.
Finally, on section CE, it talks about community health. For example, will the development tend to increase unemployment, decrease public revenues, destroy neighborhoods, or otherwise, on the balance, take more than it returns? The answer to that question on the application said, there is no negative effect to the town community. I have to disagree with that. I used AI, and I made this picture. It won't look exactly like this, because AI doesn't know what it's going to look like, but when you drive 116, that's what you're going to see.
Could you pass that down, please?
That's beautiful.
Excuse me, could you pass that down? He can share that with you later, but we're going to ask him to share that with us. Okay. And we can post it on the town website. Okay. Also,
that was all. So I think these are the adverse effect to this community. I think it's pretty obvious to a lot of people about it. So I agree and hope that the board turns down this application.
In connection to that last bit. We've asked Weston and Sampson to produce for us some representations of what the array would look like from 116, kind of like where the sugar house is, about that view, as well as from Mr. Luce's backyard. So we will have that, and when we get that information with everything else, we'll be putting that up online, so people have some sense of that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm Nelson Chiplin. I live on Shelburne Falls Road. I was in the solar business. I started Valley Solar, and I had a tracker similar to the ones that might be installed here, probably made by the same company on my home. So I have a bias. I need to say that right out straight. One thing I'd be curious to know, or I would suggest that people consider here, is that Ron Boynton's in the dairy business. And I moved here 38 years ago. There were many, many, many dairy operations in town. And his may be the only one left. I'm not sure, but I think it is the only one left. So it's pretty clear that what this really comes down to, in addition to aesthetics and ecology and so on, it's also about money, okay? Ron Boynton is going to benefit financially from these tractors. This land is going to be leased from Blu-ray or whatever. There's going to be a financial benefit to him. It may be, and I can't speak for him, but from everything that you read and you hear in the papers or whatever, it may be that this may be what is necessary to allow him to stay in the dairy business.
He's not going to stay in the dairy business.
Whether it's beef cows, whether it's cattle, or whether it's cows, it may be what he needs to do in order to maintain that property as close as it can be for agricultural use, to its current use. I'm just throwing that out there. The other thing I'd like to say is that I viewed a solar array that covered, was at least 20 acres, probably bigger, outside of Burlington, Vermont, that had trackers with sheep grazing underneath it. The slope on that piece of property, it was originally a pasture. They'd come in and added trackers, and the sheep grazed underneath there. So the slope on that property was at least as steep as what I'm looking at Boynton Farm. I think that there's enough information out there so that some of these concerns that we're hearing can be addressed professionally by a hydrologist. The aesthetics can be addressed by photographs or by a 3D image of that actual property. There's a way to do that. It's not that complicated. You see exactly what it would look like. So I would just suggest that there's two sides to the story, and I'm not sure how I feel about this myself, even though I'm in the business. I have great concerns about the storage system. But I would surely rather see a solar array there with cattle or cows grazing underneath it, or sheep or whatever, than a housing development. That's how I feel.
Okay. Thanks. Yes?
Maynard Stowe, I live on 116 at the top of the hill. And I have a couple of questions not related to the panels themselves, but to the storage system, which probably can't be addressed until we know what kind of storage system it is. But the chances are good that it will be noisy, because these are batteries, and they have, every other system I know has cooling fans going. I don't know how that will affect the butters. I'm not that close to it, but I hear things all over town when things are running. And the other thing is the placement of the battery housing and all of that is closer to the grammar school than I would like to see it. I don't see why you're going to put it on those arrays. I mean, I can understand it's more or less in the center of the array. It's probably the easiest way to run the wiring and the other thing. But why it couldn't be placed down at the far end, as far as possible away from the grammar school. And you know, those are questions I think can only be answered not necessarily by this engineering group, but has to be answered by Blue Wave and the electrical side of things.
Right.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Thank you. And I guess I'd point out that the planning board has retained consulting engineers to do peer review and help us assess more technical issues like that. And those are the kinds of things that we can affect, right, in our ultimate decision. If the decision is to go ahead, we can set conditions and things of that nature are things we can consider.
Can I just make a quick comment? There is a bylaw, sorry. Okay.
You can come back,
Just,
Deborah will come back. Everyone needs to get a bite of the
I
apple.
get it, okay.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sadie Sullivan. I live at 434 South Shropshire. I'm here with my kiddo Felix. We'll probably leave early because it's already past bedtime. But is Tom Riccardi here? I will speak for the birds if he's not here. My question for Blue Wave is what would be done to mitigate the lake effect? Because that, for folks that have not heard Tom explain so beautifully, birds flying see the shiny solar panels and think it's water and come into land and injure or die. So with 20 acres, that would be a big concern of mine. And then I was surprised that we already haven't seen a rendering. But it sounds like that's coming. And because we didn't see a rendering, or I didn't, I just was looking up, what does agrivoltaic look like? And there's a project that Blue Wave did of 10 acres in Maine, Rockport, Maine. There's all these like celebratory articles in 2021, like what a great multi-use. And then there's a handful of articles in 2024 that are like, mixed results. So, I mean, that's just like a tiny bit of research, but I would love to hear from Blue Wave, if this is your business, how do cows react to living under solar panels, and just how does that work? I just would like to know that it's not just an experiment here on 20 acres, but that you know how the cows live well with that multi-use. Thank you.
Okay. Who's next at bat? Yes.
Janet Shays, Blue Cart Road. Both of these questions relate, both of them relate to the financial aspects and the money. And I doubt, since Ron is not here, but a key question, if he needs money, a lot of money could be had for the development rights on that farm, the agricultural development rights, that about 90% is paid by the state, based on a fair market value appraisal, and the towns, I am sure, would easily match with their 10% contribution. And the assessment, George is puzzled, with a vote of town meeting, of course. And so,
Like
I
when
think
all
that's
the Topman's land.
really, really important for the town to address that somehow. How much money does he need? And that's certainly one viable option. The other one on the economics is, with this remaining in a 61 classification, which has very, very low taxes, how is the town going to benefit from the taxes on all that equipment? And has that been costed out?
You're saying you have the answer to that question? Or
No.
Chris?
No. Oh,
Chris
does
is
Chris have?
behind you.
Yes.
Chris, one of the selectmen, want to address that?
Not much.
Not much?
So you'll have a pilot, which will probably only be for the term of the build. So the town will get, pilot is in lieu of taxes, right? So the town will probably get a chunk of money at the beginning of that 1 year when they're in development, but it goes away after that.
And then they're back to just like nothing? The equipment isn't?
That's why I was asking that question of what it's going to be.
If you guys, hold on a second.
Yep.
Jeff Lacey, who's, may have some information on that question if you want to share.
I come from Shutesbury, where we had a great big old controversial solar project going 10 years ago. And there's two ways to tax them. One is to tax them like a house or equipment, and then you start at their value, present day value, and then you depreciate through the whole life of the thing. You're always figuring out what its new value is, because it's going down, 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 down. Or establish a pilot payment regime which sets it at one rate for the entire 20 years or 25 years. So everybody knows what they're getting every year, and it doesn't change, and that's negotiated. But Chris, it extends for the life of the project. The town gets money every year from pilots. And I think Shutesbury gets something like 90,000 from there every year. So that'd be 18 houses worth.
Thanks. But obviously, we'll get to the bottom of this. I'm pretty sure the St. Poland Parade the town worked out a pilot agreement. Deb, do you have any information about
I
that?
was just saying, I think it's a 20-year pilot agreement.
So payment
I think it was around 75,000 a year.
Thank you, Bob. So it sounds like the people who were involved in the other project and what Jeff is saying, the pilot agreements are negotiated between the town and the developer. We get a payment every year of a set amount, tens of thousands of dollars. But that gets pinned down more later. Yes, next.
David Fisher, 12 Falls Road. I think a lot of what has been said resonates, and I would second, but a couple things that stood out. Nelson's point that Ron is...
Can you talk a little bit?
I just wanted to affirm Nelson's point that Ron is one of very few working farmers in town, and I'm also curious about what the motives and the needs are there. Maybe it's just mostly an observation, but I think it seems like we're in a community process here. I know there's protocols and procedures, the planning board, the engineers, I get that. And I'll just say, I wish that Ron could be here to express his own needs in the situation. And I also see that there are potentially, we can only imagine because he's not here, but that maybe those needs could be met by other means. So I get that Ron is his own man and he's under no one's obligation, but I would love it if he would come and just share what are his motivations, what are his needs, and is there a way that the collective needs could be met with a more collaborative process?
Yeah. Thank you.
That's my wish.
I'm Beth Gershman. I live on Huzak Road, and actually I was the chair of the planning board. I can try. I live on Huzak Road, and I was the chair of the planning board when we what is the word?
Revise.
Revise, thank you. Revise the bylaws for solar arrays. So I just wanted to say one thing to you, David, which is I think that would be a great idea, and I think it would be best maybe approached not in a public setting.
Yes.
So just that. And I wanted to express gratitude to the planning board for this, and to say that prior to the revision of this bylaw, there was no special permitting process for solar arrays. They were by right. The only thing that we had any control over was the site review. And now we have this public hearing process, and I'm grateful for it, and the special permitting process. So I'm really grateful to you all for being there.
That's a good point, that what we are operating under today is a bylaw that Beth and her friends at the time, the planning board members at the time, drafted based on their experience with Nexam. So at least we have a section of the bylaw now that stipulates conditions and criteria and so forth that we can use as a blueprint for assessing and evaluating this new project. Anyone else?
I'd like to get another bite if I could.
Hang in there. I see a hand.
Yep.
Yes.
Will Cody, Maple Street. To underscore what conversation we started at the beginning, transparency to me indicates that the package of information is available on the town's website in one location that's easy to find, that is comprehensive. So I would ask that the conversation that you mentioned you would have would come to fruition ASAP so that everybody can have access to that application. It's 177 pages, And I had hardly enough time to look at it, let alone read it, let alone study it. So one of the things that I came here with tonight is a recommendation that we have independent engineering review that is on the side of the town that will look out for the town's best interests. If we have multiple meetings like this, I see that this is going a long way in the direction of voicing concerns, which then can be fed into an engineering review. Second thing that I noticed was that when I found the application, with the help of our assistant town administrator, nice and kind, I appreciate his support, his help there, it gave me a Google link. And it took me to some Google document somewhere out there. My question is, who owns this document? Who has the right to edit and the Google document for the application? Can it be changed? And who's under whose control? And my point is that the town needs to maintain control over a document that for which the intricacies, all of the nooks and crannies, essentially establish a contract. And if it changes, who's going to know? So I would ask that pathway be examined and ownership of the Google Doc be brought into the town. Next is, we had talked about dual use to some extent and how the state is encouraging, but yet what we heard is that there's no real way that we can monitor and enforce. So what's he going to do? Is it generally accepted agricultural practices? Is it growing corn, or is he going to hay it? Is he going to graze cattle under it? I'd like to know some of that up front. I think that's due diligence for the board, that we understand a little bit more about that. Along with that, we were told that the panels will be a minimum of 10 feet from the ground. Well, we all know, and Nelson had mentioned, he's got a tracker in his yard. We see him around town. What's the size? And maybe Melinda, you can answer this for us. What's the size of each individual array? The ones that I've seen around town are 15, 20 feet across. If they're going to be 10 feet off the ground, then the plantings that will be along 116 that might obscure, which I recommend, obscure the view of this solar application. It is absolutely not a farm. It is an industrial scale application, you know, and like Nelson, I live in a solar house. I was raised in a solar house. I've specified and installed 35 systems. So I am an advocate, but I want to make sure that this is done right, because this big blue silicone doormat is the welcome to our town. And I want to make sure that for Ron Boyden and family who will receive this nice annuity, that it doesn't diminish my property value in the process. Because folks driving up the hill and looking for a house to purchase don't necessarily want to purchase a house where this solar installation is. It looks like with a 100-foot setback, it looks like that there's been some thought about how this can be obscured, concealed. I want to make sure that's done right.
You're almost out of time.
Thank you. I'd like to make sure that I would recommend that the board has at least 3 forums like this, so that the town can get its say. And I'd also like to recommend that what the board is learning now in this process amends the bylaw that came about, that Beth had mentioned earlier. That this is an ongoing education for the town, that we leave this bylaw better than we found it, so that we don't have to go through down the same path every 6 months or a year. Decommissioning was mentioned earlier by Carol. The subterranean cables and conduits and what have you, I want to make sure that in addition, the anchors, these are huge concrete anchors that will protect against wind loads. Thank you. And those need to be removed. I would like to know that the land will be restored so that it can be used for any other purpose without having to worry about 30-foot on center, 3,000-pound concrete anchors. Thank you.
Mike Kirkalonis, Roaring Brook Road. I've lived in this town my entire life. I've known Ron my entire life. We're good friends. I've only briefly talked to him about this. And when I first heard about it, I did a little bit of investigation. I happened to be driving out to Wisconsin last summer. And I've seen multiple, I mean, hundreds of these kinds of things done out there. Cows are grazing underneath them. There does not seem to be any issue. I didn't stop and talk to them, but I've seen hundreds of them. Deer under them in the evening. I got a good friend in Whately, and I think it's a real shame to see it done in Whately because the Pioneer Valley is some of the most fertile ground in the world. Yet we're putting solar panels on it. But I did ask a good friend of mine, what are the ramifications? I know that you've had a bad experience over here, and I think that was they didn't do their due diligence by any means there. But the neighborhood down in Whately that's got a big solar array, they haven't had any issues. That this landowner, a friend of mine, said that they just haven't. They don't like the looks of it. I don't want to see it in that field. It's ugly. I don't like the looks of the solar fields. But I'm willing to bet that 99.9% of everybody in this room is in favor of solar. And I hate to say it this way, and people probably don't like it, but I'm getting the perception, just listening to this stuff, that yes, we want solar, we want wind power, but we don't want it in our backyard. And I don't want to see that there. But on the flip side of this, Ron's got a farm, they've been good stewards of the land for how long? Over 200 years, right?
Since 1760.
Well, so the farm's not viable like it used to be. He's getting subsidized, I'm sure, every year to make it viable, and that can only go on so long. So I'm sure he's gonna retire, and what's gonna happen? He's gotta make some money. So this is how he's going about that, I'm presuming. I haven't asked him this. I tried not to ask him about this, because I knew I was coming to this meeting. But a lot of great questions and a lot of great comments. But a lot of these questions and comments, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm up in La La Land, would apply perfectly to public land or town-owned land. But that's not what this is. It's private land, okay? And we have these bylaws in place. If his solar array in Blue Rock or wherever it is meet the criterias, I'm not sure if we can do anything about it. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to do something about it, but Ron's been a good steward of the land for a long time. I don't want to see it, but I think he should. I might have a real problem with telling people what to do with their own land. I really have a big problem with that. And David, I think it's a great idea. I would like to, I actually tried to figure it out. I couldn't come up with an answer. If over 30 years, how much money is he going to make on this solar array? Is there a way that we could get grants or funding to pay him that so this doesn't happen? But that's a twofold, because we can't be buying out private land and private businesses. That's not what the town is for. That's not what we should be doing, because I have a machine shop. It might make some noise. Chris is gonna build next to me. If he doesn't like it, or the town people don't like it, are you gonna buy out my business? I'm not proposing that's gonna happen, I know that. But I'm just saying it can kind of get the ball rolling in that direction. And like I said, I'm not in favor of it, but at the same time, I don't want to tell Ron what to do with his property. If he's meeting all the criteria and he's not hurting the environment, I know that it's going to affect property values for this gentleman that lives right next door, but that happens every single time somebody builds another house next to me. It could be increase my values, which I don't want, or it could be a shithole and decrease my values. So that happens all the time. I'd rather not see condos up there either. So we really need to think about this, but I'm kind of on the fence of what's going to happen here.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Elizabeth Stowe, 304 South Deerfield Road. If this goes forward with everything you're doing, and the planning board gets, just hypothetically, gets to a point where it says, we cannot resolve this, we cannot issue this special permit, does the town, the state, something have the ability to override it?
Yes.
Let's see if I can answer that question. The state law, which is designed to encourage green energy, solar, wind, battery, is in favor of these things. It promotes these things in a variety of different ways. And to some degree, hamstrings local communities. We cannot, for example, say, we don't want solar farms in our town. You know, they're not allowed, period. We can't do that because of state law and subsequent court decisions. We can deny it a special permit, but you have to have extraordinary reasons for doing so. And even then, presumably, it would have to pass muster in the courts. And there's a whole litany of court decisions where towns have tried to, in the state's eyes, over-regulate green energy and have been overturned. So there are limits to what individual towns like Conway can do in terms of outright denial. More typically what happens is the middle ground, where we don't just rubber stamp an application, but work with the developer to mitigate any potential harms that the community feels could be a result, right? So someone, for example, mentioned the BESS unit and the electronic stuff being close to the grammar school, and can you move it to the southern end? That's the kind of discussion that can readily be had, right? So you're sort of mitigating potential damages. So there are limits to what we can do. But we can't begin to figure out how to push that envelope until we hear from people like yourself. And our consulting engineers, to answer someone's question again, we have hired consulting engineers to review the proposal and give us their advice about how it falls short or doesn't, and how to mitigate potential harms that they see. So we are having technical engineering help on this. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Chuck Williams, 48 Manning Road. Just an observation and a comment. Does anybody know anything about Blu-ray? They're not contracting with the town, they're contracting with Ron.
Right.
What's their, anybody got a resume on them? Or the fact that they're not even here makes me uncomfortable.
Well,
If they want to push this, no, excuse me, let me finish. Let me finish.
No, I need to intercept that comment. They're not here today because we scheduled the hearing for today, and while they weren't ready and had conflicts, I said we're going to go ahead anyway.
Well, if they were invested, they should have had a representative.
That's a different issue, but they
I
wanted to
guess-
hold off, and I said, no, we're going.
I've done construction management my life, and I just think it's a poor choice on their part not to be here, and it makes me skeptical.
Yeah, well, Melinda's here.
Yeah, she's from the civil engineers. All the questions everybody's got is about the array.
Okay, fair enough. Are you, Elaine?
Yes. So Elaine Campbell, Reach Bridge Road, your select board member, and I'm also on the school committee. I agree with much that's been said. I have 32 solar panels on my barn roof. You can't even tell they're there, but I definitely benefit from the energy. completely in support of farmers trying to carve out a living and the land. And I do have concerns regarding our grammar school being right. The location is an issue for me, being right across the street from the grammar school. The grammar school, as many of you know, is a gem of our town. 200, less than 200 kids go there, but we shore up our school budget by school choice. If we did not have school choice, and that's because of the quality of our grammar school. As many of your kids went there, many people work there. They do an amazing job there. And people know it and come to drive their kids from other towns to this school and school choice into our school. People are very picky about school choice and they only go to the best schools. I have a little concern that a big solar array across the street with, all the questions out there about health issues and concerns and things, I'm not an expert on those at all. I'm just a little concerned about perception and what that may do to our school choice, which is a way we shore up our budget, which will be a financial issue for this town. Because right now we have 1 grade per classroom, and if you just had that school with only Conway kids, you would not be able to sustain that school. So I think that is a financial aspect that should be considered in this. And again, maybe it wouldn't happen. Maybe just the quality of the education that goes on in that school will be enough to still draw the school choice people we need to financially support that school. I cannot predict that, but I have a concern about that. I say all the time that perception matters when people are picking a school to send their kids, especially when people are driving from other places to send their kids here. So I am concerned about that cost that then the town will have to bear. We're already dealing with, escalating health insurance costs, which are out of control, that is putting a burden on taxpayers. This is another risk that I think the location of the solar farm presents to the town.
Thank you. Yes.
Robin Carson, Maple Street. Why is it so close to 116? It's almost reverse. It's placed so it'd be so visible, very much the gateway to Conway. And that's something you can't measure. We all talk about, the health aspects and and we have talked about the visual aspects, but that's something you can't measure. It tells you where you are. You come down that road and you know where you are, and this alters that in a very, very distinct way. So my question is, why is it so close to 116? Maybe that's an engineering question.
Well, we could probably we'll answer that question one point or another, but, yeah.
Okay.
Else, other than Howard?
I wanted to say one thing.
Yes.
Hi, Jody McIntyre, 960 South Deerfield Road. I guess my question would be in regards to the battery storage units. If there was to be a fire, I've heard they can be very dangerous. Is there an evacuation radius because of that? I'm like maybe a quarter mile as the crow flies, so.
Those are the kinds of questions that we're going to drill down into subsequent sessions, especially once we get the technical information from the engineers and fire chiefs, and these people can chew on for a while. But that's the kind of stuff that we would take into consideration, for sure. You all have spoken already, correct? Mary has, you have. Someone who hasn't spoken yet? Yes?
Priscilla Lynch, South Churchshire Road. And so I just want to say I was taken back from the very beginning that no one's here that's able to talk to in any way about the battery storage. And my question about that is, what is the sacrifice zone for that? Which is really a piggyback to your question.
Yes.
Because there is one.
Trust me, if there's an Achilles heel, that would be one, and we're gonna get into that. Just
What do you mean by
unfortunately not
sacrifice zone?
the full
Explain
details tonight.
sacrifice zone.
A sacrifice zone is when the area that just can't be salvaged, or they can't be protected. It is the kids at the school that when there's a fire are gonna be breathing this stuff in that can't be put out. I don't think
understand the
any.
question, and it's a good one, and we'll be getting those answers.
Okay. My other question is, what will the role of the Board of Health and the fire department have in this? Because I have not seen or heard of any fire department that said, oh yeah, this is something we can handle. And it won't be just a donation.
Yeah, all I can say about that is that 10 copies of this proposal and the maps went out to various town boards, including the Board of Health, Fire Department, Police Department, all the other boards, Zoning Board, Conservation Commission, and so on. Specifically, and I follow up by an email from me asking for their input and their questions and comments. So all those other boards in town who might have a hand in this or have had the opportunity to weigh in. And still do, but technically they had 30 days before we could schedule this hearing, during which they had the opportunity to comment.
Are you saying they've already done that?
Yes.
Okay. And that's available on the website?
No.
Should be.
Frankly, I haven't heard back from many of those people. Chris has responded, basically saying, I don't have the details I need to respond, so we're going to get there.
Board of Health.
The Board of Health responded basically saying they didn't like it.
They wrote a letter.
Yeah. The Conservation Commission apparently did, separate from the proposal, and the planning board did an RDA, a review of the wetlands issues, and determined there were none, because this sits outside the buffer zones that the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over. And I don't know that we heard from anybody else, any of the other boards. Oh, the Historical Commission said they had no comment. So there's been an opportunity for other town officials to weigh in, and so far they haven't, although, I'm not going to turn them down if they show up late at the table with questions.
And will those responses be on that set of documents on the website?
Yeah, well, following this gentleman's remarks about how we put that information together, I'm going to have to sort of walk through that with the town hall folks to see how we can pull all the information together in a more user-friendly way. Yes?
Robin Yerkes, 894 South Deerfield Road. I have several concerns. One about placement. 2. 3, will people be able to keep up with the new technology? I understand there's going to be a whole new stuff in about 3 or 4 years that will not involve panels, and it'll be much safer all the way around. Will the company plan to keep updating their equipment, or will it stay solar panels forever for the next 50 years? And what happens with vibration, and what happens if my well water is contaminated by all this?
Well, those are all good questions, and presumably those kinds of concerns that we would try to incorporate in any kind of decision we made. And
Water testing.
sweeping for new people.
Oh, what about water testing? Would that be?
For abutting wells.
Well, you raised the question, and we'll try to get an answer. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. New comments? New comments? You guys are repeats. I'm looking for someone who hasn't had a chance to speak yet. Is there anyone online we should talk about?
You can ask them. Nobody is waving their hand.
Okay. Then I'm going to go back to Howard.
Okay, I just wanted to, Howard Boyden again. I do want to reiterate what Mike said. This is private property, and it is Ron's right to do what he wants. The truth is, I don't understand the motivation here. I don't know the motivation. I haven't talked to Ron about it. If it's strictly financial, what it is, this I don't know. I got my question answered about Chapter 61A. I have one thought regarding the tear out of it. Blue Wave or Blue whatever they're called, they're not going to be here in 20 years. You know that, I know that. I think they should buy a $10 million term policy to see to it that somebody
Yep, escrow.
is able to clean it up. when they're gone.
Yeah.
And that's, if I can answer that last bit,
Yeah.
if you look at the solar bylaw, the town solar bylaw, it requires either a bond or an escrow account to cover decommissioning. And that's negotiable, right? So how much and what form it takes is one of those negotiable things.
Yeah, because you know they're not going to be here.
Well, that's why it's in the zoning, I presume. Okay, so other repeats?
Jerry.
Jerry.
LeBlanc. So these are questions directly for the planning board, and this is one of the things that we came into with the other project, the industrial solar project up on Maple Road. What teeth are you going to build into the conditions? There needs to be oversight and a way to enforce stuff when they make a mistake, when they miscalculate something, when they, when some fallout happens, there needs to be like teeth. Like the town has to be able to get on top of them and to get things fixed, get reactions, get responses, get people to show up. At our place, basically, we got to a point where the town said to us, get a lawyer. Not our problem. It's a private, civil case. If you want to get a lawyer, you can get a lawyer. But don't let that happen here. Be protector. If Ron needs to do this, like do it right and make sure we have some recourse.
Right, you want an enforcement mechanism of some kind.
Yeah. To hold them accountable.
And not just Blue Wave, but all of the contractors that they hire to work for them as well.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, just going back on what Mike said with Whately, I mean, it's a completely different landscape, so it's more like a flat land, and probably don't have as many boulders as we do. With the array being hidden, we weren't supposed to, they told us we weren't gonna see anything, but we can still see the panels when they clear cut the trees, you can still see them at the top of the hill. They did a really poor job of screening it, so just food for thought, and there is a constant hum from the capacitor bank, because when the inverters malfunctioned, I actually started an investigation. It was shut down for 2.5 years almost, because it was producing dirty electricity, and it was a high frequency electrical noise coming into our homes, through our outlets and our light bulbs and our stove clocks, it was awful. I have recordings of it, but so that noise happened in our own home from the high frequency electrical noise from the bad power. And then when they actually fixed the problem, they fixed it by putting a capacitor bank in, which basically regulates the energy coming from the panels and going down to the wires. And the capacitor bank is extremely loud. So that is something, it's not quiet, it is a loud operation. So it's something to think about, like if they say it's quiet in the beginning and there's problems, it's gonna be loud.
Okay. Yep.
I'd just like to commend you guys and thank you for your work on this. You stepped into it. We're all volunteers. Everyone in this room, I think, has a different opinion about this. And in the end, I'm confident you're going to make the right decision.
Well, thanks.
We will see to it.
Even though I might disagree with it. Somebody else might.
Yes.
Carol Bash, I just had a question. Is it a matter of economy of scale that this thing is 20 acres?
I'm sorry, I'm not catching all that you're saying.
Is it a matter, if the solar array is meant to help Ron Boyden with his finances, is it a matter of economy of scale that it has to be 20 acres? Why couldn't it be smaller? Has he investigated other ways of making his land economically, financially viable as agricultural land? Has he investigated working with the Franklin Land Trust, putting the land into conservation while he continues to work it? It seems like there might be alternatives to a massive solar farm on his land, which has so many complications, so many questions attached to it, that nobody has yet we're just asking, let alone getting answers for. What led him to Blue Wave, and who came up with this plan of a 20-acre solar farm on that hill next to 116? Aren't there possibly other alternatives for solar arrays on his land that would be less intrusive?
Yeah, behind my house.
Smaller, that would answer his financial problem.
Well, that's,
I shouldn't have brought that up. It was none of my business to say that. I apologize to Ron
No,
for saying that.
you're
but
not the one saying it.
It's an assumption.
It is because Ron Boyden feels it necessary to make this contract with a solar development agency in order to continue farming his dairy farm. It seems to me that in a farm community where the Boydens have lived for 200 years, there must be other alternatives that this community could help him achieve. The Franklin Land Trust, any number of ways, or a smaller array. Why does it have to be 20 acres
okay, I think
of solar array?
you asked the question a couple times now,
That's
I'm going
it.
to cut you off. And the broader question you're raising is sort of beyond the purview of the board, right? It's not our business to ask Ron why he did what he did and why, what he's going to get out of it, et cetera. If you all want to form a citizens committee and go talk to Ron, that's your business. But our business is to take the proposal we have in front of us and apply the town zoning laws to it. And that's kind of, and that kind of hems this in. That's our territory. Okay. Tim, did you have another?
I just wanted to say the same thing, to thank the board for the work you've done. I've gone to all of the planning board meetings since this whole thing came out, so I can attest to the work that these folks have put into this.
We're just starting.
So, is there any way that we can know if this is part of a multi-phase project? So, my concern here is they're talking 20 acres of a 100-acre parcel, and because it's, what we heard earlier was because it's part of a larger parcel, there doesn't need to be any agri component under the photovoltaics, and that as a result of this, the town doesn't have rights to confirm and guarantee that the Chapter 61A applies here. I'm concerned about that. What's a phase 2, phase 3 going to look like? And I don't see it as a consideration for what Ron's financial situation is or why he was motivated to go in this direction. He's searching for income. That's his right. I think it's the right of the town to take interest in an industrial scale project that affects how we come and go. I want to underscore also, we talked about escrow earlier. That's one for engineering review, to be sure that that what Blue Wave specifies in restoring the property to current conditions is true. They're going to have some large-scale equipment to grind up those anchors. And then on a later comment, performance guarantees. If we get a situation where they've got dirty power coming off there and it's blowing the refrigerators and the electronics of folks that are close by, what teeth can a performance guarantee offer us? Two other comments. One is that in the application it said that it'll have a 20 to 30 year life. That's a 50% differential on a large-scale financial project. What's the difference? What's causing this? In other words, they're guaranteeing that they're going to properly maintain this for 20 years, and then it's going to be another 10 years before they have to decommission the project. So I want to know the details around that. And then finally, and then I'll shut up, interconnection. I haven't seen anything about the interconnection with the grid. What's it going to look like? Is it subterranean conduit? Where is it going to connect? Over near the grade school, I suppose. That's where the trunk lines are coming up from down the hill. But I don't know, I want to know. So I think interconnection is going to be an important one. Thank you.
Okay. Are we at the end of the second vote? All right.
Enough excitement for one night?
And there's no one online who's...
Can I just make one more comment?
Yes.
Just real quick. I've heard it asked a bunch of times that it's just Ron's benefit. And from his perspective, it might be. But we all would be benefiting from this. We've all voted for solar power. We've all voted for wind power. So we are benefiting from a clean energy. So it's not just Ron that's benefiting from this.
Okay, thanks. I guess now I'm going to ask Linda if there's any sort of easy, hard and fast, sort of factual answers that she wants to provide to some of the questions you asked. A lot of this stuff is murky, not clear, but there may be some factual things that you can respond to.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for your comments. Everything, like I said earlier, related to the BESS and the EMF concerns that you had, I will bring back to the team, and we will be having answers for you at a future meeting. Just going over some of the comments that were just made. For the interconnection agreement that has not been received yet, the application itself is a part, the interconnection application with Eversource is part of this application to the town. My understanding is that three-phase, where essentially this utility easement that runs through the parcel is where it's being connected to as part of the interconnection agreement. The project will have to upgrade three-phase all the way back to that interconnection, so there is some benefit from the town related to the interconnection agreement, where Blue Wave, as part of their interconnection agreement, has to take on those costs for upgrade. The utility would perform the work, but Blue Wave has to take on those costs. The 20 to 30 year life referenced in the application has to do with the lease agreement. It's typically a 20-year lease agreement with a 10-year option at the end of it. The decommissioning comes into play as soon as the system is not operational. That's when decommissioning has to be performed. Just going back, starting at the beginning, when questions were asked, I believe you had some questions about water concern and the water flow and erosion control. So because the panels are mounted and they're tracking throughout the day, it's very different than a fixed tilt system where they're just at a fixed position and it has that constant drip edge, and you have it similar to a roof line where it just drips off that and it goes to the ground. They're going to be tracking throughout the day, and they rotate, so we don't have that constant drip edge. The other thing that's different and unique about this compared to a typical ground mount is the inner row spacing. Your typical inner row spacing can be anywhere from 5 feet to 15 feet. Because of the farming operations associated with this and needing to get farming equipment between the arrays, you have a spacing of 18 feet between your edge of panel and edge of panel when they're up in their straight position on top. So there's much more land between the panels compared to a conventional system. So the flow of water is still going to mimic what is there today. And then from the stormwater basin itself, we designed the basins for the 100-year flow, 100-year stormwater event. I've heard of the stories that the planning board has told me about the 2023 storm, but the design that we have is for the 100-year storm, just based on what we're required from a design standpoint for the regulations we designed for the 100-year storm. During construction, there will be perimeter controls in place. We'll have silt fence not around the entire limit of work because we don't want to channelize flow and concentrate it and have a scouring edge. So it will be installed in line with the contours throughout the system, throughout the limit of work, I should say. And then your question about the fencing and installing a 6-inch gap, that's something that we can modify either on the plans in a future revision or if it gets to a point of vote with special condition, a special condition, but that can be incorporated. I will have to get back to you about your questions about removal of underground systems associated with the project and the decommissioning. There were questions about Blue Wave's experience with dual use and if it has been done previously. They have done this multiple times. There's one in Palmer that they do. There's 3 currently under construction that are going to be finished soon in Granville, one in Greenfield. And then they have multiple that are already in operations. They work with, they partner with someone that's in the farming business to come up with plans for each individual farmer. A part of the DOER application for the agricultural is they have to come up with a farming plan and submit that as part of their application. And each project is unique in what that farming operation is based on the site and the farm. But they have done this in the past. I think there's one in Palmer, and they have cattle on that site. At the next meeting, I can bring pictures to show what that looks like with the cows kind of underneath the posts. There were questions about bringing imported fill to level out the site. There is no, besides the access road grading, installing the stormwater basin, the grading to level out where the equipment pad area is, the swale and the stormwater basin. There's no site grading. There's no intent to level out this area and bring imported fill for the array. The intent is to install on the existing ground and the existing slopes. There was a question kind of jumping around, but similar to on the slopes question, there was a question about 15% slopes. And the general topography of the site is there are slopes that are steeper than 15%. Here, this map here, the colored areas show where steep slopes are. The red is 15 to 18%, and then the purple is greater than 18%. So general topography, the grade at the site, there are portions of it that are greater than 15%. However, the intent of the design and what we're analyzing in terms of slopes is how the racking is going to be installed from foundation to foundation, and those slopes are within 10% is what we're measuring. There was a question about reseeding and if we're going to use a seed that's not intended for agricultural use. We actually have a waiver request as part of our application. In the solar bylaw, they ask for a pollinator seed mix to be installed under the arrays. We're asking for a waiver for that because that would not go in line with what we would need or what the project would need from a farming standpoint. So the intent is to keep the land in farming and including the reseeding. We went over to dual use success. I did have renderings. I hadn't had a chance to share electronically with the board, but I will. I do have some renderings here that I can go through that kind of show a few of the viewshed points from the sugar barn as well as the Luce's property. So this is a general overview of what it would look like from an aerial standpoint. This is South Deerfield 116, Roaring Brook Road here. Our gravel road would come in. This is the existing barn. This area here would just be used for laydown and restored after construction. The stormwater basin would be down gradient of the equipment pad area here. And then you have your tracker system. So I'm gonna go to view sedge 6, which kind of looks into the array, and then you can see where we're proposing the row of screening. And I have a rendering at different periods from the time of planting and then over the years of what that planting will look like as it grows. And your view set, the Luce's property is number 3. Okay, so from the Luce's property, on day 1, this is kind of the top of the hill. You can see the fence in the background with some of the array, but they're at the crest of the hill and it goes over. So the screening, these are the plantings here. 4 to 6 feet is what we're proposing at time of planting. I think those are honestly a little bit small for what they would be, but then this is projected at 5 years. And then this would be the projected screening at 10 years. So 5 years, based on these renderings, there is still some visibility between the fence line and the array. And then at 10 years, you have full screening from the array behind this tree over here.
I want to see what they've done here.
Can we see that?
Can we see all the pictures? Yeah.
Oh, sure. Let me just go to the 2 that were talked about in the meeting, and then I can go through all of them. And then this is from 116, the sugar barn, the sugar shack is over here, and this is looking up into the site from South Deerfield.
Will you be able to see the solar array from this grammar school parking lot?
I don't have a view shed from that point of view, but we can look into
Because
it.
from the rendering, it doesn't look like if you're standing in front of the school, you would even be able to see this.
If they're playing in the field, we'll be able to see it.
What's that?
If they're playing in the field, they'll definitely be able to see it.
So just going through all of them, this is view shed 1. This is kind of the area where people park for the rafting in the summertime. This is the cornfield up at the front. This is view shed number 2. This is the other abutter next to the Luce's property. So you can see the vegetation, the plantings on day 1, year 5. And then year 10,
Do you know what kind of trees those
This
are?
is an arborvitae.
Those are really attractive to deer.
It's a deer resistant. We proposed the deer resistant. I can look up on my plans of the species that we're proposing.
Again, I'm going to ask you not to be asking directly, getting kind of an argument or debate or discussion about particulars right now.
Okay, so,
Here to give
yeah,
you
you don't,
information.
Belinda, you don't have to look that up right now.
Okay, I have it
Yeah,
right
I'm
here.
sure we all have opinions about arborvitae, depending how much the deer love
It's
it.
the green giant is what we're proposing. So that's number 2. We looked at number 3. Number 4 is from the front of the barns along Roaring Brook Road, looking up. And then number 5 is up Roaring Brook Road, I believe near your property.
Close to my house.
I believe so. Is this your house right here? It's hard to tell from the picture. But there's the bottom field, and then there's a house directly across the street. And that's all of the renderings. So I will provide a copy of those for you guys to include with the electronic material. And then I believe there was one other.
Well, everyone's got an interest.
You've covered all the answers that you have tonight to the
Like I
questions.
bust
you
my
were
ass
asking.
renovating my house.
I believe.
That's not objectionable. But if
Yeah, those are all the ones I
we start that
Thank
creative
you.
power.
So before we just get to the, go to the, never mind. Before we break up, I wanted to give you some sense of the process going forward.
Yeah.
because obviously there's lots more information, as I've said several times, that we need to gather. Tonight, I hope that the board will recess this public hearing, not adjourn it, but recess it to May 19, that's 2 weeks from now, where we will start getting into some of the granular information. Now, we're extending the public hearing. What that means is that any and all of you and your friends can come back and have more comment, or just listen to the discussions we'll be having with Melinda and our engineers and other people. We're just, we can start talking among ourselves, but only in the context of the public hearing. So, May 19 here is the plan.
7 p.m.
Yes, whoever asked. So that's, and then presumably we'll continue again for several more sessions as we digest all this stuff and figure out what to do. Okay?
And for people who weren't here tonight, or if I think of something 3 days from now, we can email you, with more comments or input, or do you only want input in session?
I don't know that there's any reason why you couldn't send the planning board written comment. We have a town email address, and it's simply planningboard@conwayma.gov. But you're also welcome to come in person. The other thing I'd point out is that all the information that we're gathering is public information, okay? So we'll try to make it more user-friendly, accessible online, but also you should understand that there are hard copies of these documents at the town clerk's office. So if you're a hard copy kind of person, you can come in while Lori, the town clerk, is here, and she'll give you your own set to peruse in town hall. You can't take it home, but you know, if you want a hard copy to look at, they are available. I find the maps are easier to look at in person because they're so big. Yeah, I think that's all I need to share at the moment. There's something else, but I can't recall what it is. Beth, did you have something you wanted to share?
I just wanted to point out that according to the revised bylaw, arborvitae would not be considered appropriate because it specifies, first of all, taller plantings, second of all, native plants only.
Thank you.
Okay.